this video because I wasn't talking about Hollywood, and this is really actually fascinating that we accidentally went this way. So let's talk about it.
Well,
So
aren't they
we're
connected?
well,
Or
yeah,
did you find out if there's other land? Because I was on the phone.
well, we're getting there. So the person that designed Washington D.C. was named Pierre Charles L'Infant. I mean, that's Pierre Charles the kid, right? The infant.
L'Enfant.
Isn't that infant?
Yeah.
Looks like infant.
L'Enfant.
He was a French American artist, professor, and military engineer who, in 1791, designed the Baroque style plan for Washington D.C., the capital city of the United States. His work is known today as l'Enfant Plan, which inspired plans for other world capitals such as Brasilia, New Delhi, and Canberra. In the United States, plans for Detroit, Indianapolis, and Sacramento took inspiration from the plan for Washington, D.C. Think about what that just said. So they're claiming that all of the people who they built capitals like New Delhi, Canberra, Brasilia, Detroit, Indianapolis, Sacramento. I mean, Detroit up north, Indianapolis in the middle, and Sacramento all the way on the other side of the country. All of these designers of these places took inspiration from Washington, D.C., of which they had knowledge of because
The pigeons.
the pigeons, the pigeon net,
The pigeons, they carried
the pinternet,
and
the pigeon net.
maps and took it to everybody's. They all knew what it looked like.
I mean, like she's making a joke, but really that's like sort of the best explanation you can get. Because like, just think about that. How would they even know what the aerial fucking footage of it what it looked like from the air to begin with?
The pigeons told them.
Oh yeah,
Look down, and then to the left, you're gonna see Harriet's barn. But then Mac, he's got his new upgraded cow farm pasture.
Keep going.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a pigeon. I don't know what
You don't speak Pigeonese?
No pigeonese. All of them did. Because,
I mean,
the pigeons had to understand when they say, take this letter to Mary and this letter to Dale over there.
And this guy was a French American artist. And this is the best we have of him.
Well, he didn't do that because.
I mean, they all did. They all did their self portraits and shit. Let's see. Redrawn from woodcut.
Oh, he cut his image in wood, and somebody drew it from.
Because that makes sense.
Yeah. That's
I mean,
accurate.
Do you not? That's like a child. That's like a sixth grader. This guy is a prodigy. He's going to be a great artist one day. Look what he did. This was sixth grade. He did this in sixth grade. Look how good he did. And you'd be like, wow.
Wood carving of a bear downstairs on our porch. It's a bear, but when you look close, it looks nothing like a real bear's face. So to carve his image out of wood and then have somebody draw from that carving, that's like the telephone game. It looks nothing like the dude.
I mean, it doesn't look like a real person. It looks like a joke. Like, this is the same face, the same look. Think about people dressed like this, right? Now, I know in today's world, wearing suits and lapels and frilly shit and all that, that's an incredible amount of upkeep. Where were all these guys getting their shit dry cleaned on a regular basis so that they could walk around?
They hand washed everything. They didn't have a washing machine, so everything was safe.
Yeah. And they had time to do that along with pressing it all out, making it look nice. I mean, it's so impractical to think that people dressed like that. So impractical. But this guy is the one that built. He was born on August 2nd, 1754 in Paris, France.
However, wait a second though. It does seem unrealistic. At the same time, my grandparents and great grandparents, I never saw the men without wearing slacks and a button down shirt.
Of course.
That was everyday attire, whether they went somewhere or not.
Right, because
The
that's what they were
ladies
told to do.
always wore dresses. So, and that's not
But
the
who kept that up?
1800s.
Who did that upkeep? And that is still modern day. When you're
Granny, I
talking
never wore
about
pants.
what you're talking about, though, is still modern day compared to what we're told existed.
Right. So I'm saying, so if back then it was still so much dressier, who's to say that back before them it wasn't even more dressier and it just evolved slowly to more casual over the years because it's so impractical.
Right. So back in a time when life was harder and they had less conveniences, they did everything harder, and nobody thought to be like, hey, you don't have to wear these clothes like all the time, right?
But it
We
was a
could.
sign of prestige and honor and status.
Yeah, well,
And
you have prestige, honor, and status standing in a bread line all day long. I mean, just the the problem is with, like, when it comes to us, our only real connection to is from people just after, like how come Yaya doesn't talk about all the orphans everywhere? I wish I knew
she
now what I know and I could have talked to her
could
about
have
it.
talked to right. No, I tried to. I did a lot of talking with Ernie because he was like really open and candid about everything, and he was from a totally different part of the world than I was exposed to. He was from Scotland, so his him coming here with his wife, and he said he did say there were a lot of orphanages, there were a lot of kids that came over without their parents and had nowhere to go, and
Right, but that doesn't even make sense. That See, that the problem is too.
he was born in 1899, so that gives you a time frame of his
Right, but
his
what
life,
we mistakenly do is think that those people tell us the truth. It's our arrogance, and you don't want to think of it that way. But, like, I know you. I
Of
know how you
course.
are when it comes to your children, and you're much more tight-lipped than I ever would have thought you would have been. I would have thought you would have been more, but you in order to protect them, you in your mind, you don't tell them what you think in a lot of cases, and like you get mad at me for saying what I like. They're too young for that kind of stuff. And it imagine how you're going to be with your grandchildren.
Well,
And imagine that you grew up in a society that didn't have the internet, that was only told what they were supposed to know, and you firmly believe that the system had the capability to just kill the shit out of people they wanted to.
Ernie did used to say that. Like he was not a government loving
Right.
truster at all.
But still, he's
And
only going to tell you, like, he's only going to tell you what he can to keep your interest and whatnot, but not anything that's going to get you killed.
at the point, see, he was past that age though. At that point, he was in his 80s.
But he's not going to
And
say anything to get you killed.
no, but I don't. He didn't believe that though. At that point,
Yeah,
like
he did.
he
He
even
knew
got
it.
to the point where he was honest with me about what a horrible dad he was and
That's
why
fine.
his daughters,
But none of that could get you killed.
No, but I don't know. And see, you have to remember at that age, I still was only dabbling in the deception.
Right. So
Because I
you weren't
didn't see
asking too
how.
deep of questions
Yeah, not
anyway.
too deep because
And he's not going to volunteer the information because he
no,
doesn't
because
want to
he's
get you
so
killed.
filled with knowledge to share that what he shared with me depended on where I asked from.
Right. Well, but what he also again, we're not looking at the human side of it. And the human side of it is that he loved you, and that he didn't want to tell you anything that he thought would put you in danger. And I think that's something that we don't give our grandparents and whatnot when we like, again, when it comes to my family.
See, I think Gray Eye was more like that than Ernie. Ernie was like, fight the system, and Gray Eye was very
Sure,
much
he
like,
was, but he's also
keep it all
to a
to
certain
yourselves.
point. He's not going to tell you past a certain point. And
Well,
then I'm
no, then
sure
he'll
at
do
this
past a
point,
certain point.
all
See,
right, a
it's
lot of it was. I mean, these. It's hard to think about it like this, but comparatively, your grandparents, your great grandparents, your parents, they're stupid. Like they grew up with the same history books and the same narrative that they had to regurgitate. There was no internet, there was no communication, there was nothing.
less people questioning,
Right. So what
outwardly questioning
right.
things.
So not saying they're like stupid people.
No, but they're a lot more brainwashed in,
Exactly. They're
by
stupid as
design.
far as that goes. They're a few generations behind us, and it's like how we're starting to experience it with cell phones and stuff. My wife and I aren't technically savvy in any sort of way, but my kids, if you give them the phone, they're blah, 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 they can do whatever. It's just how that works, and we're gonna be the access to information is just so much different. Like our
Oh,
grandparents would
for
have
sure.
arguments that would just end because somebody would agree to disagree, and that would be that. Or they would fight, and it would be end shit or whatever. Nowadays, you go, well, hey, is this or this? And instead of two people arguing, you go, here, let me look it up, and then there's no argument. People have access to so much. The average stupid person has access to so much more information than your grandparents ever did. I don't care how many books they read, they didn't have every book in their hands. We have every book, and then every fact and everything that you could want is at the palm of your hands. Nowadays, if you want to know things, you can know way, way more than our grandparents ever could. I can sit in my room and learn. I don't have to go to some library that's limited by what the library has. You know, that's limited by who owns the library and the board and all that decides what books are allowed to be there and which ones aren't. They get to decide what you're allowed to read. Tell her, cow. Like you don't want to think that my wife will stand to her death that her grandmother was one of the smartest people that she's ever known. And she was, but she kind of wasn't. Like she could do math really well, she could spell really well, blah blah blah.
Her history, geography, all of it was on point. That woman was bright
To
as fuck.
a degree, her
Grammar was
history and all
impeccable.
that shit was on point as
Taught.
far as what you're
Yeah,
supposed to
of
say.
course.
She didn't know anything about any sort of conspiracies, any way, shape, or form.
Well, she also, that's not necessarily true because she also flat out did not believe the JFK narrative. She always used to say that the way that happened is not how they tell us it happened. And then she also didn't believe the Princess Di.
But see,
She said
at the
they
same
killed
time,
her.
she
So
could
she was
she could
still open to all of
she could not
you know.
believe it all she wants, but she has zero details.
Oh no, she didn't have.
She didn't look
Back
it
then we
up.
didn't have
Right, she didn't have it. There was no way to.
Right.
She just said that fucking footage is bullshit. And then that Oliver Stone movie comes out, and totally, like, there have been TV shows that she's probably seen throughout the years that were maybe like the investigative.
Ruby, her and I watched that movie.
Right.
She loved that movie.
She knew that kind of shit,
Yeah.
but she never sat there and spent hours on the internet just trying to figure things out, watching different documentaries and all that shit. And even then, you know, she's still someone that would be brainwashed into saying, well, you can't talk about the Jews like that, or you can't question the Holocaust like that. Even though she has direct reason not to believe it, she's still not going to question it because she's not supposed to. That's crossing a line that she's been programmed not to cross. She is a lady. Ladies do not leave the house without makeup on. Are you out of your fucking
Where are
mind?
your lips?
Right.
Why aren't your lips on?
This is how this
God, she's
brainwashed
fixing it.
woman thought. How intelligent is that? Like it, think about it. It's really, really dumb. To think that a woman isn't isn't her
Put
best.
together.
She's not put together without some smeared animal nastiness smeared on her face.
I could have all of my other makeup done impeccably, my hair beautiful, my outfit all sharp,
And a
real
light color
matching.
of lipstick.
No lip. If the lipstick wore off,
Or
first thing she'd say to me is, "Where are your lips?"
or if it was light, because she wanted you to always have like a dark lipstick on. You had to have a noticeable lipstick. It couldn't be like a. It was just ridiculous. But that was how she existed. This is a Greek woman who, if you saw her next to my German grandmother, you would have thought they were sisters, because for some reason all of that generation of elderly women all wanted to look like old Jewish women. They all wore their gaudy glasses, their big gaudy goofy jewelry, their fucking brooch, their goofy like neckerchief things, and their collars and their fucking weird colors and all that shit. Like, and they were dressed to the nines, but
All color coordinated
it was just goofy as shit. But that's
with
like
the short hair
right,
that was hairsprayed and teased
right,
into
and
different curly shapes on their heads.
gets done once a month, and doesn't get touched and doesn't get washed, and like you got to go to the beauty parlor, and like just the
Oh
whole.
no, see, I washed it every day, and all she had to do was take her pick. She had one of those picks, and they just go in and they just do this, and it naturally does that.
I'm
That's how
sure
those
once
old
you
women.
train it for fucking 70,
And she'd go
60
like
years,
this,
whatever. And
and then go like this, and I'd just be amazed, like, oh my god, it just does that. Is that gonna happen to me when I'm old? All of a sudden, it's just gonna do that. It's gonna know.
just weird, man. The whole narrative of like the Make America Great Again time, I guess. I mean, it's all bullshit. It really is. So you know what? We were supposed to be talking about the history of Washington D.C. So let's go back to that because I don't want to get
I still
off.
want to know if they own other lands in the world.
All right, so we're talking about this guy, and we know his early life and education. L'Enfant was born on August 2nd, 1754, in Gay, Paris, specifically at the Goblins, Goblins, the Goblins, located in the 13th arrondissement. Arrondissement. That's arrondissement.
Oh my eyes. Aaron dissonant. Yeah.
Yeah, the glasses are right there. On the city's left bank, like 1754, huh? Gosh, that's an amazingly accurate thing for a people that lost the telemetry data. how we went to the moon. The proof that we went to the moon. We lost that, but we have this information that proves this guy was born on August 2nd, 1754, specifically at this place, located at this place and this place. Gotcha.
That's weird. My grandfather's birth certificate was lost in World War II because the church that he was born in was burnt down. But they have proof that guy was born then.
We didn't
And
know
this is
exactly what
was-
day my grandfather was born. We knew it was like a 1 or 2 day, 3 day window where we knew we had an idea, but we didn't know exactly which day he was born. So they just celebrated his birthday on this day, whatever it was.
I think that was Papuspiro too. That was
See,
the
it makes you wonder how much of that is real or how
Well,
much of that is the program's narrative that they were told
I found
or
out
they
at
were given.
24 or something that he wasn't born on the day I was born, what I was told my whole life. Turns out Papuspiro's birthday is somewhere in October, I think,
All
or
right.
November. Like,
Uh,
yeah,
he was the third child and second son of Pierre l'Enfant, 1704 to 1787. We know his dad, a painter and professor at the Royal Academy of Painting and Sculpture, known for his panoramas of battles, and Marie Charlotte Leleur, the daughter of a French military officer. Boy, howdy.
he was pissed she married an artist.
This guy came from some fucking
Wow.
royalty, man.
So
He
there's
studied with
some
an intense curriculum at the Royal Academy from 1771 until
smell
1776.
that?
Yes. With his father being one of the instructors. Academy classes were held at the Louvre, at the Louvre, ugh, benefiting from the close proximity to some of Paris's greatest landmarks, such as Tuileries Garden and Champ. I know it's not Champs. Elysees, both designed by
Chandeliers.
Andre Lenort, Lenotre, and Palace de la Concorde, both designed. Okay. The infant would have also learned about city and urban planning during his time at the Academy, likely examining Baroque plans for Rome by Domenico Fontana and London by Sir Christopher Wren. Of course. He was described by William Wilson Cochrane as a tall, erect man, fully 6 feet in height, finely proportioned, nose prominent, of military bearing, courtly air, and polite manners. His figure usually enveloped in a long overcoat and surmounted by a bell-crowned hat, a man who would attract attention in any assembly.
That's how people spoke.
Yeah.
So much more proper than they do.
Or, it's all fucking bullshit. That's why it sounds like bullshit. People didn't really speak that way. Come on, it's just dumb. People spoke like they were writing books back then, huh? In his orange shirt with the fluffy duffy, let the blah
Well,
blah.
so I, when, especially when I was younger, would spend a lot of time talking to old people, especially like when I went on that trip to Naples to the old folks community. And I spent the entire trip doing nothing but talking to all of the old people. I was astonished by the proper way that they did speak. It's not to that extreme, of course. But again, that's my grandparent, great grandparents' generation.
Okay.
So what about the two generations before them?
Okay, so all of these people learned how to be so proper and have such great diction and all that by the mothers who taught them in homeschool who weren't allowed to be educated and were married off in their early teens.
I think a lot of the diction was picked up from just the people around them. You know, you
That's
learn to
not
talk
how
by
that
the people
works.
around. Well, it kind of is because you've got, you put a baby in the hood, they're gonna talk with a lot more slang than somebody you go put out in South Lyon. It's
Yeah, but
gonna be different.
it's
It
going to be a
affects
different amount
how
of
they
slang,
talk.
but it's not going to be like proper. None of it's going to be like ultra educated. The idea that everyone spoke in this ultra educated manner when, again, where would they have learned it from? I mean, obviously they're talking about some of these people like going to these universities that apparently existed, and I mean it just adds more to the question to me because it's like so I'm
So much must
supposed
have
to
happened in
believe.
such a short period of time if things were so desolate like they told us they were back then.
Well, I mean, I'm
And now
supposed to
all of a
believe they
sudden
had
we
these
have all
huge
this.
universities.
Well, I mean, okay, huge might be a relative term.
No, I'm not. No, it's not. A lot of these old, like Harvard and all that, they covered the same amount of grounds.
They
These
were
were
just as
huge.
big.
These were huge. And a lot of those places have those old world buildings on that were supposedly built in a year or whatever, But they're clearly these old world buildings. And a lot of it, you go, okay. So things like the Palace of Versailles or just any of these huge just go look at anything in like Europe and Rome and all these places where people supposedly live forever and they built all these huge look at all the old paintings we saw at the DI. Once you go inside one of these buildings and you go past the first sort of room, where is all the light coming from?
Windows.
No,
Skylight.
once the windows in the skylight, there's we're talking about huge palaces that have interior places.
Candles.
And then a lot of these places have
Oil
multiple floors
lanterns.
and shit like that. So you got to think. So
They had the sconces on the
how did you
walls.
how did you light an interior third floor hall, whatever? We're talking about people walking around by candlelit every. Do
Yes.
you know how much soot and smoke and all that would these buildings would show that. They wouldn't be painted with these beautiful frescoes everywhere because they'd all be ruined from the smoke, from the moisture.
People regularly cleaning the walls.
They don't.
They did.
They
The
didn't.
servants.
They didn't. That's just the thing is they just didn't. That doesn't make any sense. Where did they get all these people? How did all these people learn to design all these things? And you know, that's why I always look up these individual people, like that guy. Again, so everybody's gonna argue with me, submarines, blah blah blah, and my wife is in that other side. At least she is, but was way more so a couple weeks ago because over the last couple weeks tried to figure it out. And the guy that invented the nuclear submarine, this Jewish guy who joined the military at 18 years old and was just supposedly stationed all around the world all throughout the early 1900s, 1910s, 1920s. He joined in 1918. So from 1918 to 1929 or so, he was stationed in multiple places around the world. And then somehow between 1929 and 1933, he is in Washington. And in 1930 specifically, he's in Washington and he's in Sacramento, or he's in California. I can't remember where exactly in California, but somewhere in California. And he's in Philadelphia all at the same time, where he supposedly, I guess, learned how to build to be a nuclear engineer. Like it just. I'm sorry if those narratives don't work for me. And when I go to look the shit up, like it should be where I feel stupid because it's this clearly laid out thing. And you'll see that a lot of times. What did we just look up the other day where it was like, see, it's like this and it's clearly like this, and you can see the timeline progressing, and you can see like the timeline doesn't have a bunch of overlap and weird shit and just yada yada. I can't remember what exactly it was, but it was obvious. Whereas you read these stories about these, how in the 50s we just decide we need nuclear submarines. And by 52, we fucking have them. 52, 54, whatever it is. And in a 2-year time span, we just figure that shit out. And how the breathing systems, how do they breathe in submarines and all that, how that all works. Well, good luck figuring that part out. Because even though, like, people will say, oh, it's top secret stuff, that's why. No, if it's top secret, then the military wouldn't be taking videos of themselves inside their fucking submarines, posting that shit on YouTube. He was described by William Sarah DeHart, daughter of New Jersey statesman John DeHart, drew a silhouette of L'Enfant in 1785. It now hangs in the diplomatic reception rooms at the U.S. Department of State. So, that is like the picture of him. That one that I showed you, that black and white. That's the picture. This guy is an artist himself. He is so fucking prominent at a time where supposedly, like, kings are getting all kinds of paintings done. Every fucking person that existed that was important at the time was getting paintings done. Not this guy, though. Military service. After his education, L'Enfant was recruited by Pierre Augustin Caron de Beaumarchais, and like, that's a big ass name. That literally is almost the entire line. All of that blue at the top there. To serve in the American Revolutionary War in the United States. He arrived in 1777 at age 23 and served as a military engineer in the Continental Army with Major General Lafayette. He was commissioned as a captain in the Corps of Engineers on April 3rd, 1779, to rank from February 18th, 1778. He was commissioned as captain in the Corps on April 3rd, 1779, to rank from, what does that mean? Despite his despite his aristocratic origins, right, because I forgot about that, right? He comes from the highest levels of society, but, yep. L'Enfant closely identified with the United States, changing his first name from Pierre to Peter when he first came to the rebelling colonies in 1777. L'Enfant, yeah, that tricked people. What's your name? Peter L'Enfant? Oh, so you're not French. If your name was Pierre, then I'd have been like, what? Pierre L'Enfant? That's not okay. But Peter L'Enfant, I'm cool with that. Serving on the General George Washington's staff at Valley Forge. Of course he did. While there, the Marquis de Lafayette commissioned L'Enfant to paint a portrait of Washington. This guy painted a portrait of Washington, but nothing of himself. That's amazing. During the war, L'Enfant. Oh, this is the boulevard. This is the neighborhood he grew up in. I guarantee all those buildings are supposedly from that exact time too.
That's supposed to be back in the day. Let me see that.
No, that's the neighborhood that he lives in. That's the neighborhood today, but that was the neighborhood he grew up in.
Where's that at?
It is
What state?
Boulevard Saint Marcel.
Oh, in France. Okay,
Yeah.
That's why it's so beautiful.
Right. But that's how the French, like, that's how they were living back then. In the 1700s. Just, fuck yeah, why not? You got donkeys and shit, horses with carriages and wooden wheels, but you're building 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-story fucking buildings. Yes.
Well, I mean,
Yes.
if you can build one story, who's to say you can't just keep going?
Me.
Why?
How would you be able to, like you have to get those materials. First of all, you have to get all the materials there. Then you have to get the materials up. And the higher you go, the harder the materials are going to be to get up. The more weight the bottom materials have to be able to hold and then withstand forever. Like it's incredibly amazing design that I guess we were just so capable of doing back then. And what we're not seeing is how there's probably all this intricate cut, this, that, and the other, blah, blah, beautiful.
Gorgeous. Because people took pride in their craftsmanship.
It's not because people took pride in their craftsmanship. That is crazy. To just assume that it's because people who were less capable, who had less opportunity, who had less convenience and everything like that,
But
who had
higher
much, much
skill.
harder lives, were capable of carving incredible stonework without screwing up all over the place. It still would have taken time, time and energy and effort. That like how the not only did these people know how to do it, they all did, and they all knew how to do it in the exact same way because it's these exact same buildings exist all over the world.
See that that's funny that you say that because that takes me back to stories from my elders that always used to say, you kids nowadays are in such a rush. You don't ever take your time to do things the right way. I remember that being like a regular complaint that I heard. You're in such a rush. It doesn't need to go that fast. You don't have to do it that quick. Take your time. Do it right. Do it nice.
Yeah, but none of your elders were construction builders who built the incredible architecture that is strewn throughout Detroit that doesn't make any sense. All these sacred geometry windows and all of these, all this shit. None of those people happen to be any of those people though. Like we're talking about people who worked in factories. And we're talking about again, I really think it's important that people sort of understand that your grandparents do not tell you the truth. If at a young age they were traumatized by the system that they were in and taught that if this ever comes out, you guys ever start talking about this, we're going to do this same thing, if not worse, to those people you love. You're going to be dead, but your family will still live on, and we can do horrible things to them. And all the patriotic bullshit and all the other shit, and probably some sort of Stockholm syndrome where they're grateful. This idea that that our grandparents and shit are like proud and grateful that they lived in a time when they made $20 a day and they worked their asses off and they had zero conveniences and everybody was military and everything was militant and McCarthyism was running wild and you know and we were super racist and we were super sexist and we were super homophobic.
It was about being the same. Everything was about
Everything had to be
the same
exactly the
like your
same.
neighbor.
You'd go through the neighborhoods, and every Saturday, the wives all throughout the neighborhood would be out hanging the laundry up on the lines because on Sundays, all the dads would be out cutting the lawn, and you couldn't have the laundry hanging up while the lawn was out.
Yep. And if everybody did it, then nobody would be negatively affected by the lawn mowing.
And all these women were getting this shit beat out of them by their piss drunk husbands all the time, who were all, not all, but who a lot of them were suffering from tremendous forms of PTSD from either
Military.
being military or growing up in a military household. It doesn't get talked about how so many like the romantic thing. So what everybody was tricked into doing, all the women were tricked into what you need to do as a young teenager. You're 17, 18 years old. This kid is about to get sent off to war. You need to marry him and get pregnant.
Yep.
And then he's going to go off to war where,
hopefully he'll come home.
Hopefully he'll come home. Hopefully he comes home without any STDs because they're out there, well, they're doing what they need to do. And so he's gone for however many years. The woman raises the kid, gets a job,
gets a house set up,
gets everything all set up and does it the way that she wants, and it works. And the mom and the kid are actually happy together. They're actually making it work. The families are all pitching in. It's all this good situation. And then this crazy fuck comes home. And he's all fucking shell-shocked is what they called it back then.
So sad.
He's all fucked up. He's been told for the last however many years, you go be a savage fucking killer. surrounded by other people, or maybe even them, who are cutting people's ears off and wearing necklaces. And they're living in just horrendous conditions. Doesn't matter which situation you're talking about, but World War I has been just unbelievably horrendous conditions. And then the idea that they're fucked up from it is some pussy shit, and they need to man up. What you do in that time is you man up. So then they send these fuckers home, all fucked up, and so many of them go upstairs, go to their parents' home, and live in the fucking attic for 2 years, 3 years, getting drunk every day and just hiding from the world, scaring the shit out of their parents, and or they go home to this ready-made family that's waiting for them, and this woman and her child, they're not prepared for that. It's not even something that's talked about. It's just, I know you were working and you had a good gig going, and everything was good. You need to now stay home because he's going to go to work. He's going to have this. He's going to do that. And you need to be the servant now. And then this guy comes home and he's like, this house is going to be run like a military. All that other stuff. Oh, I want this plates in this drawer. And I'm like, the plates were fine. And no, bitch. Psh. And she couldn't do anything about it. If she got hit and she told someone, they'd be like, well, honey, he's been going through a lot and he'll get better. Don't worry. You can't leave him, though. This little girl, she was 17, 18 years old when she met this guy, dated this guy, got pregnant by this guy. They dated like a month or two. She didn't know who the fuck this crazy fucker was. Like it's wild. And when you have those people that come home and then the kids that grow up in that scenario, that's why you have so many kids that were just out. They didn't want to be home. But those are the kids that didn't want to do war. They saw the horrors of war at home. They saw their moms getting beat up. They saw their dads being drunks. And that was like, I mean, again, go watch the old TV shows. The Honeymooners is one of the original, like, big blockbuster shows. And what's the most famous line from that show?
To the moon, Alice.
Pow! Right in the kisser. One of these days, he's going to punch his wife in the face.
So hard, she's going to fly up and hit the moon.
That's the whole... And then, it's so popular that they put his face in the moon. They're the honeymooners. And,
yeah.
Because that's his line. One of these days, he's going to punch his wife so hard, she's basically going to see stars. I watched an episode of Good Times the other day when Michael was getting bullied by this kid. So he, instead of fighting the kid or whatever like he's supposed to, he ends up bringing the kid home and telling the kid he can stay at their house for the weekend as long as, they study, and by Monday they're going to bring his grades up. This is a kid who was beating him up. So the kid shows up and he's all jive talk. Hey, Jack, you can't tell me. He's all badass, blah, blah, blah. Well, at some point, the dad has enough and snatches the kid up, takes his belt off, and takes him back in the back room where he spanks the shit out of him. This dude just spanked some other person's kid.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, yay, that was great. We grew up, we see, like, even my wife, she does it. We all sort of, these kids today, these parents, they don't do, well, these parents, how many of the people today were truly taught themselves how to properly deal with issues and problems and hang-ups and hiccups and all that stuff, and how to deal with dysfunction and talk things out. Most of them were probably spanked. The idea that for generation after generation we were told we need to physically abuse our children. Like, think about how fucked up that is. And if you think it's like, you think this generation isn't as good as the previous generations and blah, 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 understand that the previous generations, your grandfather made as much money in, like, his career as you may make in 5 years at a low level job. He was making, $100 a week or $200 a week or whatever, and this was enough to be able to afford a house, afford a car, afford a television, afford a phone. Which back in the day, the phone companies, the way they used to rate people is it's never even talked about nowadays. Cell phones are freedom, unlike just the ability to make phone calls. The way that they used to rate people with the phone charges and long distance and international and all that shit. They did that for decades. And yet these people, our grandparents, they were able to live really amazing lives, not making nearly as much money as we do. But nowadays, if you're a kid and you want to go out and go try to find a one bedroom apartment that's affordable. No wonder these kids are staying home longer. They can't afford to live. You can't have it.
Somebody posted in our local group, which our city is a middle to low income city as a whole. It's a blue collar city, just outside of Detroit. So, as far as income wise, somebody posted in the Redford group asking if there were any one bedroom apartments that anybody knew of in a low income unit place or not for $600 price range. And every single person, a ton of people responded, said when they were looking, there was nothing under $1,000 a month for a one bedroom apartment without a yard, without a basement, without a garage.
How are you supposed to afford that while going to school? While,
You can't even have a roommate comfortably because it's only one bedroom.
Right. This is, and
oh my God, I couldn't believe it. No pools, no,
People talk about this shit like it's our fault our shit's so fucked up. It's not our fault our shit's so fucked up. We don't have any control over that stuff. Stop it. You're old, just accept it. This is a one of these ruses that's been put on us that, you have people complaining because the people that work harder than anybody else, the people that work minimum wage jobs, want more money. And the only reason people complain is because if you have this job where you're making $22 an hour and minimum wage is $10 an hour, that's a pretty great job. But as soon as minimum wage is $15 an hour and you're only making $22 an hour, then you're like, hey, wait a minute. What it's like people it's more about themselves. Like, why would you care? But at the same time, how can a place like McDonald's afford to pay all of those people all of that money, $15 an hour, and expect to turn any sort of profit? They're barely, like, I always heard that they don't even make money on the double cheeseburger or whatever. That's why they had to jack it up from 99 cents. And other shit that people never talk about, right? We always talk about like back in those days, you could be a TV repairman and make a good living. People would call you because their TV wasn't working right. and you'd go to their house and you repair their TV. That was a really good job. A lot of people put their children through school being a TV repairman. There are people who put their children through school, had a house, had cars, being elevator operators or operators on the phone. Back when every phone call had to be connected by an operator. Operator, yeah, I need KL5. We don't talk about that shit. All the baggers, all the cashiers, and all those jobs that used to exist. Those, you couldn't necessarily put your family through school as a bagger, but as a secondary bit of employment, those jobs brought in a lot of money for families. Not to mention, you didn't have to put yourself in debt to go to school to learn any sort of professions. It's all like, it's an illusion. The illusion that society is falling apart and it's our fault is bullshit. It's by design. We've all been taught that Generation Z, this generation that exists now, I don't even know if they're called Gen Z. I think they're the Gen Zers. That they're the laziest, worst generation. They weren't told no, they're stupid, they're bad. This is the only generation that's ever existed that stood up to Israel across the board. Still is. Where the college campuses are full of protests. It's just not getting talked about like it should be. But the college protests, the college kids, Generation Z, are protesting the genocide taking place right now. And they're the first ones to say, we're not scared of Israel. We're standing up. We're saying this is wrong. And yet, this is, the narrative is that they're somehow the weak, stupid ones. You have to see it for what it is. Isn't it interesting how, as always, there are stupid people that come in and talk about anything but what's getting talked about. I always find that fascinating. It's like basically admitting you're not smart enough to be involved in the actual conversation, but you want attention. You're like a kid that's stuck at the kids table and wants to sit at the adult table. So they come up and they're like, give me something stupid, thinking it's gonna be something smart. And everybody's like, yeah, okay, little Billy, go on, sit back down. Not yet. You're not quite ready for the big kid table yet. Anyway, well, this guy from the 1700s, his history is amazingly detailed. During the war, oh, all right. During the war, L'Enfant made a number of pencil portraits of George Washington and other colonial army officers. He also made at least 2 paintings of Continental Army encampments in 1782. They depict panoramas of West Point and Washington's tent at Verplanck Point. The latter details what is believed to be the only known wartime depiction of Washington's tent by an eyewitness. Seems strange. Like, why would that be the only one? Self-projection is strong with this guy. Says the person who came in talking shit. They depict, and again, when I say how interesting it is that you don't address what's being said, when I address what you say, I'm actually doing what I say. But maybe if somebody else explains it to you, you'll understand. Brady. They depict panoramas of West, the latter detail, blah, blah. The 7.5-foot long painting was purchased by the Museum of American Revolution in Philadelphia. He made a 7.5-foot long painting, just like, ba-ba, ba-bow, ba-pow. During the fall of 1779, L'Enfant contributed to the regulations for the order and discipline of the troops of the United States, authored by General Friedrich Wilhelm von Steuben. He was tasked, Captain Steuben. He was tasked to draft the 8 plates or illustrations detailing camp and troop formations, as he was the only artistically trained individual involved. That's fucking stupid. Like, everybody can draw. The Blue Book was completed by April 1779, receiving approval from General Washington and Congress. For his efforts, Congress awarded L'Enfant $500 and officially promoted him to Captain of Engineers, retroactive in February 1778. So that's exactly what I'm saying. This guy was paid a whopping $500, which back then was a bunch of money. But, you know, today, like, you laugh, like, what? He's only paid $500. L'Enfant was wounded at the Siege of Savannah on October 9th, 1779. This guy, he has such a detailed history, and yet only one painting of him. Not even a painting, like a charcoal drawing. Come on. He recovered and became a prisoner of war at the surrender of Charleston, South Carolina on May 12, 1780. He was exchanged in November 1780 and served on General Washington's staff for the remainder of the American Revolution. Well, that was convenient. While the historical consensus generally attributes the creation of the Badge of Military Merit, later known as the Purple Heart, to George Washington in 1782, there is an implied claim by Pamela Scott, Washington, D.C., historian and former editor of the L'Enfant Papers at the Library of Congress, that L'Enfant may have conceived the medal's design. L'Enfant was promoted by brevet to major in the Corps of Engineers on May 2nd, 1783, in recognition of his service to the cause of American liberty. He was discharged when the Continental Army was disbanded in December of 1783. In acknowledgement of his Revolutionary War contributions, L'Enfant received 300 acres of land in present-day Ohio from the United States. However, he never set foot on or resided in the granted land. A map outlining the territory was sketched on the reverse side of a segment of L'Enfant's land deed, signed by President Thomas Jefferson on January 13th, 1803. So, 300 acres in Ohio was given to him. I mean, think about the idea that the President of the United States is out there he's out signing all the deeds. Yep, here's another deed. Okay, here, let me sign that. Okay, now this is a deed for who? Who is this? Okay, let me sign that. Like, it's just so stupid. It's stupid. Well, here's a picture of Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton supported L'Enfant and helped him secure work in Paterson, New Jersey, after he was dismissed from the Federal City Project. So this guy is buddies with all of them. I mean, he's hanging out with Hamilton and shit. Like, kind of interesting how much Hamilton looks just like him. That's him. That's Hambone. Bet they called him Hambone. Hey, Dookie Butt. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Alright. I'm gonna bounce. So, you guys have a great day. Pedophiles, kill yourself.